Well, Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses franchise is one hell of a diabolic, gruesome, and bloody ride, and that's putting it lightly. The famous horror director did everything in his command to include famous horror movie tropes like a family of maniacs that kills and abuses young men and women. However, what makes the Thousand Corpses trilogy interesting, apart from the good old slasher vibes, is that the survivors are not always the good guys. In fact, Zombie has tried to turn the family of serial killers into something on the lines of protagonists. Now, in this video, I'll explore the three movies in great detail because I guess that's the best way to find out what happened to the survivors of the House of a Thousand Corpses franchise. Let's begin, shall we? But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. House of a Thousand Corpses, 2003. A grainy black and white sequence comes on the TV. Dr. Wolfenstein hosts a Halloween marathon, throws out a few campy lines, and gets viewers hyped for a night of horror flicks. Then the commercial jumps to a bizarre commercial for Captain Spaulding's Museum of Monsters and Madmen. This ad features Captain Spaulding himself. Now, who is he? So, Spaulding is basically an old redneck clown in smeared makeup who brags about his fried chicken and offbeat serial killer-themed attraction. He has a wicked grin, greasy face paint, and a mouth that never stops running. His place, which doubles as a rundown gas station, is one of the few establishments on a lonely road near Rugsville, Texas. The date is October 30th, 1977, and this dusty corner of nowhere is about to become the backdrop for something far more twisted than a roadside curiosity shop. Outside, a local sheriff stops by to fill his cruiser's tank. He tosses fried chicken wings to his dog and looks half bored, half annoyed. Inside, Captain Spaulding chats with Stucky, an old-timer who seems just as worn as the gas pump. They argue over a topless autographed picture of June Wilkinson and jabber about some local half-wit who works down the road. Stucky heads to the restroom, and two masked thugs burst in. Right away, it's obvious these guys picked the worst possible place to rob. The lead thug, who calls himself Killer Carl, orders Spaulding to cough up the cash in the register. His sidekick, Richard Wick, the local simpleton Stucky was talking about, holds Stucky at gunpoint. Carl threatens Spaulding, but Spaulding doesn't scare so easy. He cusses out Carl's mom and sister, basically daring him to pull the trigger. Stucky notices Richard looks familiar and realizes he's the weirdo from the hardware store. Suddenly, a third person in massive overalls and a clown helmet busts through the front door, wielding a mallet big enough to smash a car hood. This person slams Carl to the ground. Chaos erupts. Richard panics and fires off a shot that kills Stucky. Spaulding whips out his own gun, plants a bullet in Richard's skull, then strolls over to Carl, who's still breathing on the floor. With one last insult, Spaulding pulls the trigger and ends Carl, then goes right back to business. Cut to the opening credits, and then we switch to four friends cruising through backwoods Texas. There's Denise, Mary, Bill, and Jerry. The radio news mentions a group of missing cheerleaders in the area. This creeps them out a bit, but they're more focused on finding weird roadside attractions. They end up at Captain Spaulding's gas station, where they see him mopping up a giant bloodstain on the floor. He doesn't bother to hide it. It's important to note that this guy is not some usual gas station owner. When people are killed in his establishment, he cleans the corpses up and doesn't go to the cops. He's actually cheerful about taking them on his murder ride, a rickety cart tour through serial killer history. They see references to maniacs like Ed Gein, and the whole thing is so unhinged that they can't decide if it's hilarious or disturbing. Spaulding's assistant, a deformed fellow named Ravellini, operates the ride. He's the same guy from the mallet attack. Jerry notices a creepy display about Dr. Satan, a local legend who once got strung up for hideous experiments but vanished without a trace. Spaulding acts uncomfortable, as if Dr. Satan is a topic he'd rather bury, but Jerry won't drop it. So Spaulding finally scribbles down directions to the old hanging tree where the locals supposedly tried to kill this infamous doctor. The four friends get into their car and set off to find the spot, feeling half thrilled, half spooked. The weather turns nasty. Rain lashes smashes the windshield, and the sky looks about ready to crack open. They pick up a hitchhiker named Baby, a gorgeous blonde who seems sweet for about 2 seconds before her odd behavior kicks in. She jokes around, flirts with Bill, and rambles about random nonsense. Without warning, the car's tire goes flat. Later, they realize it wasn't just bad luck. Someone blasted the tire with a shotgun from the roadside. A tow truck pulls up, driven by Baby's brother Rufus, who's built like a tank. He leads them to his family home, a gnarly old farmhouse surrounded by scarecrows and decaying baby dolls that dangle from poles. It doesn't look like the friendliest place to spend Halloween Eve. Inside, the friends meet Mother Firefly, a bizarre woman with rotting teeth who cackles through stories about her ex-husband and how she set him on fire. Grandpa Hugo shows up too. He's a foul-mouthed, crotchety old man who jokes about the crudest things, and that's on his best day. Then there's Tiny, a 7-foot-tall beast of a man whose face remains hidden beneath a mask. Mother Firefly says he got burned in that same blaze she started, so now he skulks around the house, silent and off-putting. Nobody wants to be here any longer than necessary, but the family insists they stay for dinner. It's a nightmare dinner party, with greasy plates of food and weird stares from every corner. Up in one of the bedrooms, another family member, Otis, is busy torturing a group of missing cheerleaders. Yes, the same ones mentioned on the radio. He rants about Dr. Satan, hollers about his own philosophies, and then wanders downstairs to join the main event. The four friends are understandably on edge. Otis rattles off local legends of Dr. Satan, teases the visitors about their naive curiosity, and then reveals a plan to show them some real Halloween festivities. After dinner, the Firefly clan stages a homemade variety show. Grandpa Hugo performs a gross stand-up routine laced with cussing. Jerry laughs, probably because he's still a bit stoned, but the rest of the group looks uncomfortable. Baby lip-syncs to some old tune, sways her hips, and tries to flirt with Bill. Mary, Bill's girlfriend, isn't having it. She jumps up, shouts at Baby, and calls her out for being a psycho. Baby whips out a knife and threatens her until Mother Firefly drags Baby away and insists the kids leave if they can't handle it. Right at that moment, Rufus steps in and announces he has fixed the teen's car. They grab their stuff and rush out. But the scarecrows on the property aren't just stuffed sacks. Otis and Tiny leap from the posts, bash Bill and Jerry, and destroy the car. Denise and Mary scream, but nobody hears them. All four end up back inside as prisoners. The Firefly family wastes no time in tying them up in different rooms. They keep Bill alive just long enough for Otis to mutilate his body into a grotesque artwork he calls Fish Boy. Jerry gets a chunk of his scalp sliced off by Baby, who uses the exposed flesh as an excuse to taunt him. Denise tries to talk Tiny into setting her free. He unfastens her chains for a second, but she's quickly recaptured and thrown into a cage with a pack of insane captives who claw at her. Denise's father, Don, grows worried when his daughter doesn't call on Halloween morning. He drives out to Rugsville and asks the local police for help. Two state troopers, Wydell and Naish, agree to investigate. The three stop by Captain Spaulding's museum, where the clown acts like he barely remembers the four travelers. After a lot of eye rolls, Spaulding gives them directions to the Firefly house, the last place he sent the kids. On the way, the men discover the teen's car, complete with a butchered cheerleader's body in the trunk. The situation is no longer a casual missing persons case, it's a horror show. They reach the Firefly house, where Wydell knocks on the front door, while Naish and Don slip around back. Mother Firefly answers and turns on the charm, doing her best to look innocent. Wydell gets suspicious when he hears some strange noises, and before he can fully react, shots ring out behind the house. Naish and Don have forced open a shed door and stumbled upon a scene straight out of hell. Mary dangles from the ceiling, barely alive, surrounded by mutilated corpses of the missing cheerleaders. Slim Whitman's I Remember You floats through the scene, giving it an even weirder vibe. Naish and Don are in complete shock, so Wydell jumps up inside the house, alarmed by the commotion. Mother Firefly pulls a gun and shoots him through the neck, killing him instantly. Otis steps out back and fires at Don, who flails in the mud and dies face down in a filthy puddle. Naish drops his gun, raises his hands, but Otis marches right up and blows his brains out at point-blank range. Now the entire rescue team is gone. The Firefly family claims total victory and decides to celebrate with their own twisted ritual. Otis flays Don's body and wears his skin like a sick costume. Rufus drives around in Wydell's patrol car, probably drunk out of his mind. Baby goes to buy liquor from a dude named G. Uber, who clearly has no clue about the horrors in her trunk. Later that night, they haul Jerry, Mary, and Denise out to a remote area. The captives are forced into fluffy rabbit suits, though Mary tries to escape the moment she's in the open. She bolts through a graveyard of toppled crosses and half-buried bones. Baby sprints after her and plunges a knife into her over and over until Mary stops moving. Jerry and Denise are stuffed into a casket and lowered into a well-like pit. Disfigured freaks crawl out of the water and drag Jerry away to who knows where. More creatures pop up and rip at Denise's bunny costume. She's terrified but manages to break free, stumbling through an underground lair. She comes across a cramped operating room. There sits Dr. Satan, alive and not remotely human anymore. Tubes and mechanical parts sprout from his body like vines. He looks like a drippy, pus-covered cyborg. He's in the middle of operating on Jerry's exposed brain. Jerry's eyes are open, but he's clearly on his last breath. Denise can't do anything but stare in horror. Then Dr. Satan's assistant, a massive beast called the Professor, decides to take care of the intruder. He's a huge guy with an axe, part machine, part human, possibly Mother Firefly's ex-husband who survived the fire. He chases Denise through the tunnels, swinging that heavy weapon. He misses a blow and crushes part of the tunnel ceiling, causing a cave-in that buries him under debris. Denise scrambles away. At dawn, she digs herself out of a patch of dirt and crawls onto the highway. Captain Spaulding drives up in his old car and seems to offer help. She climbs into his passenger seat, weak and terrified, relieved to see any sign of normal life. But it's no lucky break. Otis sits up in the back, grinning with that madman stare. The final shot shows Denise back in that underground lab, pinned to Dr. Satan's slab with no hope of escape. He's about to continue his grisly experiments, and her screams echo against the walls. So yeah, it's safe to say that this movie had no survivors. None at all. The Devil's Rejects, 2005. In May of 1978, newspapers run headlines about missing people and describe how cops eventually found them. They raided the Firefly house and discovered human body parts inside the fridge, plus furniture made from severed limbs. Of course, Rob Zombie makes it clear that he loves Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Their gruesome discoveries push the body count to at least 75 victims. Reporters label the Firefly clan the Devil's Rejects, and that name sticks. Early one morning, Tiny drags a naked, mutilated woman's body through the woods near the family home. He wears his usual burlap sack over his burned face. This was a Freddy Krueger reference if you didn't get it yourself. As he lumbers along, he notices a whole convoy of police cars rolling up to his house. Tiny steps back into the trees, unseen, while the cops form a perimeter around the property. This raid is led by Sheriff John Quincy Wydell, whose brother, Lieutenant George Wydell, was murdered by the Fireflies. Everyone straps on bulletproof vests and load their guns. One of the officers, Ray Dobson, wonders out loud if they're about to die, but Wydell snaps that dying isn't on his agenda. He picks up the bullhorn and shouts for the Fireflies to come out. Inside, Otis sleeps next to the corpse of a dead woman, while Baby and Mother Firefly sleep in their own rooms. All of them scramble awake when they hear Sheriff Wydell yelling through the speaker about how the house is surrounded. Otis peers out a window, grabs his pistol, and heads downstairs. Baby slips on some clothes, grabs a gun, and joins him, while Mother Firefly hurries from her bedroom. Rufus Jr. waits by the stairs in makeshift body armor and points out that they're trapped. They wonder if Tiny is still out there somewhere. Otis and Rufus post up the front of the house. Baby and Mother Firefly take the kitchen area. Mother Firefly tears up and tells Baby she still remembers Baby's angelic face at birth. They whisper, "I love you," and pull on their own metal masks. Otis readies his skull-painted mask and braces for a fight. A hail of bullets shreds the house as soon as Wydell gives the order. The Fireflies shoot back with their machine guns and pistols. A couple of cops fall, but the sheer number of gunshots from outside overwhelms the family. Otis manages to hit Wydell in the chest, but his vest saves him. Furious, Wydell stomps closer, reloading his shotgun again and again. He finally tells his men to hold their fire and toss tear gas canisters inside. He kicks the front door open with a gas mask on, followed by a swarm of cops. Otis and the others jump out from behind cover for one last attack. Several officers drop, but the police force is too big. Rufus gets gunned down despite his body armor. Mother Firefly rushes to his side, devastated, and that gives Otis and Baby a chance to slip into a hidden tunnel. Wydell corners Mother Firefly and orders her to drop her pistol. She tries to shoot herself, but her gun is empty. He arrests her and promises it won't be easy on her. Otis and Baby flee through the dark tunnel, past the screams of people they've held captive. They emerge through a sewer exit and sprint across a field until they're far from the cops. Meanwhile, Mother Firefly is hauled away in cuffs. Along the road, Otis and Baby see a nurse stop her car after spotting Baby sprawled on the ground. Baby pretends to be hurt, then ambushes the woman. Otis stabs the nurse, and the two thieves peel off in her vehicle. The police, back inside the house, find proof of the Firefly's long list of murders. They see notebooks, Polaroids, and pictures of Captain Spaulding smiling next to dead bodies with blood on his hands. Wydell recognizes Spaulding from the old days and tells his men to track down that twisted clown. We jump to Spaulding in bed with a prostitute, although in reality, he's in the middle of a crazy nightmare. In his dream, the woman pulls a gun and threatens to blow him away because she doesn't like being called a whore. She laughs, fires the gun, and Spaulding snaps awake for real. He finds himself next to a different, less attractive companion. As they get dressed, Spaulding sees a TV commercial for his own roadside attraction. He's irritated when a news bulletin interrupts it with footage of the raid. The headline calls his family the Devil's Rejects. Baby phones him to explain how the police swarmed the house and how she and Otis barely escaped. She and Spaulding agree on a rendezvous spot, a rundown motel they chose for emergencies. Otis and Baby take the nurse's car and head that way. Spaulding climbs into his battered truck and does the same. Sheriff Wydell, now at the station, grills Mother Firefly about where Otis and Baby might go. She's uncooperative and jokes about her past as a prostitute. He shows her horrific pictures of the family's victims, but she's smug. She pulls out a few photos of Lieutenant George Wydell, the brother she killed, which sends the sheriff into a rage. She laughs at him and taunts his dead brother's memory. He slaps her, grabs her throat, and promises to kill her entire family. Other officers break it up, and she yells that her clan will murder him first. Meanwhile, we see a place called Charlie's Frontier Fun Town, run by Charlie Altamont and his helper Cleavon. The place is a tacky ranch/brothel. Charlie complains about low earnings, and Candy, one of the prostitutes, floats a goofy Star Wars idea where she would dress as Princess Leia. They're all half joking, half desperate for fresh ideas. The phone rings and Spaulding calls. We find out that Charlie and Spaulding are adoptive brothers. Charlie balks at helping any of the Fireflies, but Spaulding hangs up before he can argue. Elsewhere, Otis and Baby arrive at the motel. Spaulding hasn't shown up yet, so Otis curses him and tells Baby to rent a room. Nearby, a country band called Banjo and Sullivan is traveling for gigs. Adam Banjo, his wife Wendy, Roy Sullivan, Roy's wife Gloria, and their roadie Jimmy. They laugh about a mechanical bull accident where Gloria's top came off. Roy and Jimmy go for ice while the others settle into room 2. Jimmy heads off to a gas station to buy beef jerky, so Roy is alone at the ice machine. Baby slides up, flirts with Roy, and pretends she lost her cat. She threatens him, and Otis appears with a gun, forcing Roy to bring them to room 2. Adam opens the door and gets shoved onto the bed with Wendy. Otis storms into the bathroom and drags Wendy out of the shower, tossing her next to her husband. Gloria stands nearby, freaking out. Jimmy returns with his arms full of snacks, knocks on the door, and Baby lets him in. Otis wastes no time. He shoots Jimmy in the head, leaving the rest of them horrified. Adam vomits in panic. Otis calls them liars for saying nobody else was with them and gets more aggressive. Meanwhile, Spaulding's truck runs out of gas, so he pulls over and notices a woman and her kid leaving a convenience store. He demands their car on account of top-secret clown business. She tries to protect her son, but Spaulding knocks her out cold and slides into the driver's seat. He scares the boy by ranting about clown hate. The kid can't even speak. Spaulding warns him to come up with a good reason for hating clowns or else. He orders the sobbing kid out, then drives off to meet Otis and Baby. Back in room 2, Baby toys with Roy by dancing in front of him. She asks if he likes it. Roy refuses to look. He insists he's a married man. Otis decides to see what's so special about Roy's wife, Gloria. He forces her to strip down to her bra and underwear, then runs his gun along her body. He ends up shoving it into her mouth and forces her to degrade herself. He calls her disgusting, throws her down, then orders Adam and Roy on a drive out to the desert. They take the band's van and leave Baby behind to guard the women. Otis makes Adam drive to a junkyard. He says he buried a crate of weapons there, and once he digs them up, these guys will die. Roy and Adam try to reason with him, but Otis mocks them. Adam finally snaps and smacks Otis with a piece of wood. Roy tries to grab Otis's gun. Otis fights back, a vicious struggle breaks out, and Otis stabs Adam's leg with a hunting knife. He then wrestles the gun from Roy and forces Roy's finger on the trigger, shooting Adam in the neck. Adam collapses, choking on blood. Otis pistol whips Roy for good measure. Then he deals Roy a fatal blow with a chunk of wood. He limps over to Adam, who begs for mercy. Otis sneers and hacks up Adam's face with the knife. Back at the motel, Baby watches TV with Gloria, who hums along with the music. Wendy asks to use the bathroom. Baby doesn't care, but demands a little show first. She orders Wendy to slap Gloria, then do it harder, then kiss Baby's cheek and say she's having a great time. Wendy rushes to the bathroom and tries to break out through the window. Baby hears the smash, readies her knife, but Gloria grabs Baby's gun and points it at her. Baby has a big blade hidden behind her back. Gloria yells to Wendy that everything's okay, but Baby lunges and hurls the knife into Gloria's chest. Gloria pulls it out in a last act of desperation and tries to shoot Baby, but the gun's not loaded. Baby laughs. Wendy runs out and finds Gloria dying, so she bolts outside screaming for help. She pounds on motel doors, but no one opens up. She dashes to the pool area and sees a man, so she begs him for help. It's Captain Spaulding, who's part of the same murderous crew. Baby catches up, and Spaulding knocks Wendy out with a headbutt. They drag her back to the room, gag her, and tie her to a bedpost. Spaulding asks why Otis hasn't returned. Baby says he went to fetch their guns. Otis returns, brandishing a mask he made from Adam's peeled-off face. It's pure nightmare fuel. He kisses Wendy while wearing Adam's skin, and they decide to leave Wendy for the hotel maid to find in the morning. When that maid eventually opens the door, she finds Jimmy and Gloria in the bloody bathtub and the walls covered in "The Devil's Rejects" scrawled in red. She screams, which startles Wendy, who's tied up to the door with Adam's face strapped to her own. Wendy manages to break free, stumbles onto the maid, then tries to flag down a car in the parking lot. She still has the horrifying face mask. Drivers swerve to avoid her, and a truck mows her down. Wendy dies in the street, bits of her body scattered across the road. Sheriff Wydell arrives to see the carnage. He orders an officer to scrape Wendy's remains off the pavement. The motel maid can't ID Otis, Baby, or Spaulding. Just then, two bounty hunters appear, Rondo and Billy Ray Snapper, nicknamed the Unholy Two. Wydell hires them to track the Fireflies. Meanwhile, at the station, an officer notices the family uses aliases from Groucho Marx movies. They bring in a film geek for help, but he's useless. The Unholy Two phone Wydell to say they've discovered Charlie Altamont uses a Groucho alias, which suggests the Fireflies might be heading that way. On the road, Otis drives while Baby teases him about ice cream. He refuses to stop, grumbling it's a risk. Spaulding eggs Baby on, and they start chanting for Rudy freakin' Tooty. Otis eventually caves and pulls over. They scarf down ice cream, and Baby giggles as she smears some on Otis's beard. The mood seems downright giddy for a bunch of killers. Wydell wanders the burned-out Firefly house and drifts into a strange vision. He imagines seeing his dead brother George in the basement. George tells him that he's stuck down there until the family dies, so Wydell needs to cross the line and finish them off. Wydell wakes up in a sweat. He visits Mother Firefly in her cell later and murders her with a knife, stabbing her in the chest twice. He leaves her corpse behind, the knife still on the table. His bloodlust is unleashed. Charlie comes out with a shotgun and pretends to threaten them before firing a squirt of water in Spaulding's face. They laugh and hug, then party with booze and weed. Wydell, meanwhile, drinks alone and talks to himself in the mirror, whipped up into a total frenzy of revenge. The next day, Charlie and Cleavon drive off to buy chickens for dinner. The sketchy seller makes creepy jokes about having sex with chickens, which freaks out Charlie and Cleavon. They take a few birds and head home, but Wydell blocks the road with his truck. He injures Charlie Fingers with the car door and warns him to stall Otis, Baby, and Spaulding until midnight or he'll kill Charlie too. Charlie doesn't have much choice. Wydell meets Rondo and Billy Ray at a grimy trailer. He instructs them to ambush the Fireflies at Charlie's place. He doesn't care what condition they're in, as long as they're alive enough to feel his version of justice. They call him sick, but they'll do the job. That night, the Fireflies drink and do coke with Charlie's prostitutes, clueless that Charlie sold them out. Suddenly, Rondo sneaks up on one of the women, Cassie, and slits her throat. Billy Ray kills another prostitute when she tries to defend Otis. Spaulding gets cornered by Wydell, who downs a shot of booze before shooting Spaulding in the gut. The unholy two leave with their payment, while Wydell tosses Otis, Baby, and Spaulding into his truck, cackling about the big finish. He hauls them back to the Firefly house, ties them to chairs in the basement, and brags about his family's mission to destroy evil. He presses photos of missing girls against Otis's chest, then staples them on. He does the same to Baby with other pictures. Spaulding tries to mouth off, so Wydell beats him with a metal pipe. He nails Otis's hands to the chair. He soaks the place in gasoline, lights a match, and sets it ablaze, then unties Baby, telling her to run for her life. Otis and Spaulding struggle to free themselves as flames spread around the room. Baby runs outside, but Wydell hunts her with an axe. She tries to hide in a barn where she bumps into Charlie. He offers to help rescue everyone, but Wydell appears out of nowhere and buries the axe in Charlie's throat. Baby limps away after Wydell shoots her in the leg, and he begins strangling her. Tiny steps out of the darkness and snaps Wydell's neck like a twig. Baby gasps for breath and tells Tony to save Otis and Spaulding. Tiny charges into the burning house, yanks the nails from Otis's hands, and helps them both outside. They all limp to Charlie's car, and Otis takes the driver's seat. Spaulding and Baby collapse in the back. Otis asks if Tiny wants to join them, but Tiny shakes his head and strides back into the inferno. The house explodes with him inside. At dawn, Otis cruises down a desert highway while Spaulding and Baby rest in the back seat. Then he sees a massive police roadblock waiting for them. He stops, wakes the others, and they realize they can't escape. The three decide to go out blazing. They raise their guns, hit the gas, and fire at the cops, who answer with hundreds of bullets. Otis keeps driving, ignoring the pain from multiple wounds, until their car slams into the blockade. Their wild, bloody run ends under a barrage of gunfire, and the Firefly family dies together. Or does it? Well, there's a third movie, so you know. 3 from Hell, 2019. The story starts with a nationwide media frenzy over the Firefly gang, family, whatever you want to call it. Baby, Otis, and Captain Spaulding. News outlets run non-stop coverage of how they somehow survived that bloody shootout with the cops. A massive trial follows. Protesters crowd the courthouse and chant "Free the Three," claiming the Fireflies were some kind of anti-establishment heroes rather than sadistic killers. None of that helps. All three land life sentences. Captain Spaulding doesn't stay alive much longer. He's executed by lethal injection. Otis's half-brother, Foxy Coltrane, appears out of nowhere to break Otis out while he's outside on chain gang duty. Otis takes the chance to kill a guy named Rondo, who just happens to be on the same chain gang but fails to recognize Otis. Meanwhile, Baby sits behind bars, losing her mind a bit more each day. Her attempt to get parole falls apart, so Otis and Foxy hatch a plan to bust her out. They kidnap Warden Virgil Dallas Harper's family and friends, then threaten to butcher them unless Harper helps Baby slip out of prison dressed as a guard. Harper goes along with it, and soon Baby is free. No one survives this arrangement. Otis and Foxy take out the hostages and Harper to wipe away any loose ends. Reunited at last, the three lunatics argue about their next move. Baby's behavior grows more unhinged, so they decide to run off to Mexico. After crossing the border, they settle in a tiny town in the middle of a Day of the Dead festival. They grab a few rooms in the local hotel. They worry someone might spot them, though they assume it's a long shot. The hotel owner recognizes them anyway and sends word to Aquarius, who's Rondo's son. The owner then keeps the Fireflies occupied with booze, prostitutes, and the party outside until Aquarius and his crew arrive. In the morning, Baby strikes up a friendly conversation with Sebastian, one of the hotel's workers. He sees strange men rolling into town and senses danger, so he warns Baby just before those men burst into the whorehouse. Otis and Sebastian hold them off until Foxy steps in, but they're outnumbered. Otis runs off, hunts down the backstabbing hotel owner, and kills him. Baby switches to her bow and arrow. She snagged it from Harper's place and skewers several of Aquarius's henchmen. Eventually, Aquarius gains the upper hand, captures Foxy and Baby, then leaves Sebastian for dead. He expects Otis to show himself to save them. Otis returns with a vengeance. He squares off in a knife fight with one of Aquarius's men. Sebastian frees Baby and Foxy in secret, which throws off Aquarius's plan. Otis wins his brawl, and the trio manages to take down Aquarius, though Sebastian dies from a gunshot in the chaos. They set Aquarius on fire and watch him burn. Then Otis, Baby, and Foxy stroll away into the dusty Mexican horizon, as if they haven't just slaughtered a dozen people. The main villain, Aquarius, barely appears until the last chunk of the story, then gets wiped out fast. The Fireflies walk off into the distance without a single consequence, ignoring Foxy's nasty gunshot wound like it's a scratch. It hints that they'll keep causing mayhem somewhere else, maybe forever. The ending leaves a weird, open-ended feeling. The Devil's Rejects once looked like the final word on the Fireflies, but now the saga marches on with no neat conclusion. 3 movies in, and it's still wide open. Maybe that's the point. Maybe you can't ever fully kill the boogeyman. Captain Spaulding didn't dodge death, but the rest of them wander off, battered but alive, onto another lonely highway. Is it the end of the Fireflies? Well, I'll let you decide that. But for now, the 3 of the survivors of the Thousand Corpses franchise are the bad guys. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.